where we started the process, is frequently hit by typhoons, landslides, tidal surges, so all sorts of weather events. People there are used to having to evacuate at a moment's notice their homes and stay away for 2, 3, 4 days and then come back and check the damage and fix their houses. So it's a community that is heavily affected by disaster and displacement.
This is the Digital Humanitarian, where we explore how technology is transforming crisis response.
Welcome to today's episode, where we are going to talk about emergency preparedness and specifically how we can use artificial intelligence in order to promote that. Today, we're going to go towards the Philippines, a country that's really struck with disasters, with over 20 cyclones on average a year, with over 20 active volcanoes. And we're going to talk about land rights and how vulnerable populations can still maintain their rights to their land even if a disaster strikes. And for that, we have two very exciting guests with us. We have Ibere Lopes, who's the Housing and Land Advisor at IOM, International Organization of Migration. We also have Raphael Schoenball with us, who's the Product Manager at UNDP's Digital Studio, who build really cool digital products for the entire UN system. So thank you very much, Ibere, and thank you, Raphael, for being with us today.
Thanks, Dana.
Thanks for having us.
Happily. And Ibere, maybe we can start with you. I think it'd be great to maybe just set the scene. You guys are launching now, or have launched, a really, really cool pilot program around a project called the LandLedger. And also you're launching it in the Philippines. So maybe you can, first of all, take us to the scene, why the Philippines, and also maybe why the LandLedger?
All right. So the Philippines is the perfect place to test this type of initiative. The premise behind LandLedger is that when we go to the sites to respond to a disaster, most of the time what we find is a situation of complete informality, in the sense that people won't have established land rights, established rights to their properties, and there'll be no records to speak of. And if we have to, for example, support someone with a shelter or repairing a shelter, we have to do this work of reconstituting where people came from, what connection they had to that house, were they the owner, were they the tenant. So all that information has to be investigated post factum. So the idea of LandLedger is to capture that information beforehand and in informal context. Now, what's interesting about LandLedger is that the only way really to capture that information, because it's so informal and because it's in people's heads, is to get their stories, because the connection that they have with the land is not going to be a document. It's not going to be a checkbox. They'll say, I own, I'm renting. It's going to be a whole story about, I built this house 20 years ago. I used these materials. The land belongs to my neighbor, but we have an arrangement, etc. So it'll be a complex story that cannot be captured by traditional form-taking exercises. The idea of LandLedger then is to capture those stories through the narrative and then tease out this information for the disaster response agencies to use.
It's brilliant, and it makes a lot of sense. You don't want to send people a form, but rather, and especially when we're talking about certain populations, it's really a story. And I guess the Philippines, maybe take us to the scene of where we're running this pilot program.
So the pilot was running in a small fishing village called Hinitligan. It's on the coast of an island in the Philippines called Catanduanes. It's where we started the process. Is frequently hit by typhoons, landslides, tidal surges, so all sorts of weather events. People there are used to having to evacuate at a moment's notice their homes and stay away for 2, 3, 4 days and then come back and check the damage and fix their houses. So it's a community that is heavily affected by disaster and displacement. Now, it's also a community where informality reigns. So no one in the village has proper documentation or proper recorded land rights. And that was the other aspect of it that was interesting to us, which was how can we give visibility to the arrangements that allow them to stay there and live there and build their houses there. What type of arrangements do they have? So teasing that out and making that visible was the goal for this pilot, and I think we did a good job doing it.
How do you build trust? I mean, why would they kind of come to you and share with you their story? How do you work around that?
Yeah, that's a good question, because there's a whole preliminary work that had to be done with the community. First of all, with the help of UNDP Digital, before we started this pilot, we called members of the community to do a workshop to co-design how we were going to go about that exercise. So they came with us, they spent the whole day designing even their idea of the UX for the intake app, what they wanted to see in it, and what value they could see in recording those stories and recording that relationship that they have with the land. So doing this together with the community is what gained us the trust that was needed for us to go there and start asking all those questions that can elicit a lot of sensitive issues. So we were very conscious, very aware of that, the need to establish that connection before going in.
The power of collaboration and really working with the community instead of working above it, makes such a difference. You got me curious. You said UX. And Raphael, maybe you can share with us, what is it that we're talking about? What is this kind of storytelling to database technology that we're looking at?
It's very important first to highlight the human-centered approach that we took, because, so Ibere just mentioned this, we had first the workshop and really thinking about, okay, what do those affected by typhoons, by landslides really need in order not to create something that then is actually of no use. So I like the approach very much to have community members really with us and just thinking about how we could approach this and how we could solve this technically. And I think what Ibere also said is because if we want to put the human in the center, we also need to capture the story of the human, right? And so what we realized during this process is that humans don't fit, stories don't fit into forms. That's the important thing. Traditionally, you would just have this survey and you have the questions really designed for a specific use case. But actually, life is much more complicated than what you can think of when you design a survey. And so our technical solution to that would really respond to this way that we need to find some kind of solution in order to ensure that just more complex stories than we could ever think about can be captured by the system. And so the approach was just really, you go into the village, the enumerator approaches a household. So the enumerator is basically the one collecting all the information and then, entering into a conversation. And this conversation is recorded. And the recording goes into our database, and the database would then actually just transcribe what has been said. And then we would use AI in order to summarize it, in order to have a short story that can be then displaced in a profile of a person, and then also extract relevant information from this transcription. And so this is a bit like the process from enumerator to the profile, what's happening.
So it starts with a human to human, two humans having a conversation. Conversation is recorded, as we all know and love, like we do on podcasts and Zooms. That transcription goes into AI to be summarized. And then that summary you push into another app, you push into a database, which then what? Which then takes in, relevant information, or how does that work?
Well, so actually, that was when we also used Monday.com, put this into a Monday.com database. And then during the process, we were finding out that we need the summarization functionality. And so, I checked out Monday.com to see, okay, they actually have it on the platform. And so we could just really use the functionality to have one column basically with all the recordings and all the transcripts of the recordings, and then just apply this AI function with a click, and then you could just have the summarization of this transcript in the next column, which would basically say something like, the household owner has lived in this house for 20 years. There are X amount of kids living in the house, and it's a family, and it's rented or it's owned. This kind of story would be in the summarization. And so that was quite astonishing and nice to see how easy that was.
I know you took also other data points, right? So it's not just kind of the summary of the story, but really for you guys, you have now a database of information, of kind of data, actionable data.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, if I can jump in here, what was special about this exercise as well is that we wanted to collect a rich data set, and the use of stories provided this richness that we were looking for. And why is that? Because it's the richness of the data set that makes it actionable for disaster response agencies and actors, right? If you had, for example, a profile of a household saying, this guy owns the house, right? And then you want to go and help him repair his roof. When you get to the site, there'll be all sorts of conditionalities about his ownership, all sorts of other arrangements that are not captured by a form, right? But with LandLedger, what we have is a whole rich story where this guy is going to say, yeah, I own the house, but I don't own the land. And if I need to make any changes to my house, I need to go and negotiate with the landowner. And actually, the deal that I have with him involves the lobster catch that I have to pay monthly. So, I mean, all this information will never be captured by a form. That richness was captured by the stories, plus we try to involve other elements. So, for example, taking photos of the house and the structures of the house, so people could see the before disaster hits, and then after, they're able to upload new photos if something happens to the structure of the house. And also photos of any documentation that they have that can connect them to their home. So even electricity bills or any receipts that they pay for services, things that connect them to the property that they are occupying.
You're basically saying we have the full story, we have the short summary of the story, we take out actionable data, figure data or special cases, lobster catching. And then we also have footage and additional information like that, so we know how to approach it if need be in terms of preparing for when the cyclone, for example, the typhoon hits. Yeah?
Exactly. And because this was also, as a pilot, was also a testing phase, what we did, we also went to check the official records for that village. So we went to the land registry and we collected the maps that overlay that same data collection site. And we compared what we collected, so what people told us about who owns what, and also the parcels that we drawn with the official records. And the discrepancy is huge. So the official records will have less than half the number of parcels that we collected. The official records will have names of owners that are long deceased and their children have been long deceased. So there's like a 3-generation gap between what's in the official records and what is in the reality. Right? So showing that discrepancy was very important for us as well as a proof of concept to prove that there was value in doing that exercise.
And is it being received well, positively, I guess?
It has been received very positively, both by the donor that funded the project, which was Innovation Norway, but also by the local disaster management authority, because they have bird's eye view data on risks, vulnerabilities, weather events for the area, but they don't have the granularity of household by household situation and conditions of vulnerability. So matching those data sets for them was super important, and they're very happy to have that data as well.
Why is this not the norm? I mean, both of you kind of said, listen, just having a form and collecting data, that doesn't work for anyone. We need a human-centered approach, not a standardized approach. So both from kind of the humanitarian perspective, Ibere, and from the technological perspective, Raphael, why do you guys think this is not how everyone are now collecting data and information from humans?
First of all, the technology is new, right? The technology that is allowing us to do that in a cost-efficient way is new. I mean, we could maybe, 5 years ago, send enumerators to the field, record, get a human to transcribe all the recording. I mean, that would be immensely cost-intensive and time-intensive. But now with LLMs, the large language models that we used were extremely efficient in doing the transcription of the audio, even in the local languages, and then extracting. So you can query the transcript now with LLMs. You can say, that family there, how long do they stay away when they get a typhoon warning? How long do they stay away from home? And then, so you can ask questions to the transcript, things that you could never do before. So I think it is a nascent field for data collection in general, not only about land property rights, but about everything, really, to have this sort of qualitative plus quantitative data collection exercises. And I think that we'll see more and more of that.
It sounds difficult. So, Raphael, maybe you can address that. Was that difficult? Is it something that could be done or like mind-blowing difficult?
Yeah, I think generally it's a lack of knowledge, basically. So what tools are out there and how easy it is to use. It's also a bit of a culture, like maybe we've done it before, like the path dependency of like traditional approaches. But I think generally this will come definitely. And Ibere said that this technology is new. And I think, well, that's definitely also a huge aspect why this is not the norm and the standard. And I think like for LandLedger, we were even too early, I must say, because we also tried a real-time voice model. So everybody knows how you can talk to the ChatGPT app and it's responding directly to you. And we had a small test where we thought, okay, how about we try to make one of these real-time voice bots an enumerator. We named it Arling Mila. And Arling Mila would just go through the questions one by one and just ask it. Then the interviewed person would basically then respond in the local language. It also would answer what it understood and then proceed with the next question. And it was like a nice try. And I think that's something that's definitely on the come. But I think we are maybe a bit too early. I think generally it has a lot of advantages concerning these voice models can talk in so many languages. That's just a huge advantage. Scalability is also a huge topic because, having AI models being enumerators, you just need a cell phone in order to collect data and not to send people to everywhere. And also it addresses some kind of illiteracy issues as well because, people who cannot read or write and answer to a survey can talk to an AI model. We ran into some issues concerning the language, actually. I think in English, it just performs quite well. I tested this out in Vienna and it worked perfectly. But in Tagalog in the Philippines, it was just a bit difficult. And then we also had some kind of connectivity issues as well. So you must imagine that the village that we are at is really, you imagine like mountains that then go underwater suddenly. And you have this like small valley and there is the village basically. And just at the coast. And it's so interesting to see like how that we even had internet was, I think, incredible. And that was just one of the best things that I've done in my coder life, just sitting in this village and then with Starlink, seeing how the data collection is happening. This was also quite a problem because like Arling Mila would stop talking in the middle of the sentence. And I think this is just some kind of latency thing that would have to be addressed. I think this will come. I think we were just a bit too early with this test, but honestly, just checking something like this out in the setting was worth it.
It sounds like you were maybe, a little bit too early, but also just in time on so many things. I know the LLMs were already great at kind of transcribing from different languages, and Monday AI blocks came out already and were very functional for you to use, but maybe the live chat and the live conversation was really not just ready yet. But it also sounds like this is something you're going to continue to do. This is really just the beginning.
Yeah, so Ibere is in the project lead, but I think it would be just amazing to get all the different new technologies that arise and that just are really so fast-paced evolving currently. It's so interesting to just watch the new releases every day, every week. And I'm really excited about that. Actually, I think this will be how technology will actually work and facilitate and support the collection of data in humanitarian activities.
You kind of said this is easy. More organizations should know how easy it is. It sounds scary maybe and complex, but I'd love to see things move forward with more organizations kind of following your footsteps and doing more kind of a mix of humans to data and not just, like the data parts of it. I guess looking ahead, Ibere, if I can ask you, if you're looking ahead and you're looking at the LandLedger project, then generally, looking at migration or looking at vulnerable populations, how do you see this kind of technology in this project progressing? And I'm sure you guys have so many plans already, but would love to hear about it.
I think that's the use of the methodology, because now I'm a specialist in this area of land and property rights in crisis settings. So I see a lot through that angle, but I can see also that the methodology that we are using for that particular project can be applied for so many other things, can be applied to health, can be applied to migration, can be applied to human rights. And I think that getting LandLedger right now at this moment and learning a lot about it, the LandLedger can become a catalyst for other areas and other humanitarian agencies to use that technology and to use that methodology. When there's like a disruptive technology out there like LLMs and artificial intelligence, it takes a while for people to feel comfortable experimenting and implementing and incorporating those tools into their work. The power of the legacy is very, very strong, right? So it takes courage. People are a bit shy about, dipping their toes into this new thing. And I think we're very lucky to have this possibility of doing an experimental type of project that could show us that it was possible, right? And how valuable it is. So even this past weeks that I've been trying to show other areas within IOM, show LandLedger to my colleagues here, and then people are starting to realize, oh, I can use that in my area as well. Oh, this would be amazing in my area. So even this internal sharing, it's starting to take roots, and I think that can be something that will spread to other organizations as well.
I'd love to hear about the project, but beyond the project, I mean, LandLedger is a use case of how we can transform the way we collect data and the way we interact with humans on a much more human-centered approach. Like we really put them in the center and we talk to them. We don't adapt them to our process, but rather, what is the story? It's fascinating. And what about specifically, I guess, LandLedger? I mean, how do you see that expanding? Of course, spending funding and everything that's needed.
So now we are planning how we're going to turn this experimental pilot into something that is scalable. We have to do two things for that. One, we have to turn into a round product that can be easily adopted by other organizations. So something that can be plug and play, free to use, and maybe you're going to have some other layers of licensing and add-ons to make the project sustainable. But I think that the methodology and the process has to be free to use and it has to be easy to adopt. So turn the project into that package is one thing. And the other thing, we need to start testing the project in other types of contexts, because the context where we tested it in the Philippines was a context that, yes, is challenging because of the disaster-prone areas and the risk and the informality, but it's not a conflict area, right? So it's not a zone where people fight over land. And it was a sandbox in a way for us to play in. But I think that LandLedger could have a huge value in areas where people are forced to flee because of conflict, right? In areas where people, once they flee, they can't prove that they had a connection to the land that they left behind, that the house they left behind, and that house is now occupied by someone else, right? So if LandLedger can help with that, that'd be amazing. So little by little, we're veering into this area where there's a little bit more tensions, a little bit more risk, and trying to implement LandLedger there. So we're going to test in those areas very carefully and very cautiously, and trying not to, because our main concern is doing harm. We don't want to do harm. We don't want to elicit more tensions. But we have to test it on those areas. And once that is tested, then I think we'll be able to scale.
Amazing. And Raphael, I guess, maybe would love to hear your thought process around it, because you come from the technology. And what Ibere is saying is LandLedger is a very interesting use case, but really the core of the technology, which is what you basically had a lot on the creation side. I remember our first talks around it. You really created it. How do you see that kind of progressing in the future?
Yeah, so first of all, I think one aspect of it that I really liked about the project was that during this process, we also had, like at the heart of the application, which is basically, I think, the summarization functionality from the transcription to the small story and to the other data collection points that we want to extract. I was able to bring the humanitarian side, like Ibere and Melina from IOM in order to really write the prompt. And I think that is key to so many AI projects generally, because you need to make sure that those people, like the AI can do so many things, but the prompt is something that should really be in the hands of those who are really experts in the humanitarian side and not the technical side. That really also helps to avoid this black box AI. AI can do everything. No, AI can do specific things really well, but people have to have a feeling what AI can do and what it cannot do. And so that's what I especially liked about that. When it comes to the heart of the application, I was able to just have others do it that actually know what needs to be in the prompt, what data needs to be extracted. So that was something really cool. And I think generally when we started, we also had my colleague Agnes. She was great as she really focused on the human-centered design and thinking about, okay, what is it that we need to solve? And I was thinking, how can we do this technically? Like, is there like a technical solution to this? Could we make it happen? And yeah, I like this thought process very much. And even after the workshop that we had in the Philippines, then doing it and then coming back in order to test it for the first time, that was a really fun process.
Do you already have kind of other agencies and other coworkers kind of reaching out to you and, hey, I spoke to Ibere about that really cool kind of process you guys created. Can we test it as well?
We do have NRC and UN Habitat on our advisory board. So, that's already 4 agencies, IOM, NRC, UN Habitat, and UNDP, that are aware of the project and are interested in following. So I think it could spread very, very quickly.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very, very, very much for your time. It's been fascinating. I'm personally excited that I get to kind of see this project in action and progressing and growing. It's really a beautiful baby you created.
Thank you so much, Dana, for having us, and thank you for your support to the project as well.
Disasters are often unpredictable, but response efforts don't have to be. If you're a part of an aid organization, having the right digital tools can mean the difference between chaos and coordinated action. If you need practical tools for your organization's disaster management, visit mondayert.org. And if you enjoyed this, please share it with one colleague or friend who would find it useful.